Morning, everyone. That Mexico trip is a life changer. I know I have two boys that have been on it. My one son he's got tattoos on his body named after the soup kitchen that we built one year that they went down. He has been down there now, I think, 11 times with the teams, and just believes in this vision so much. We get so excited when there's people that step out, give of themselves to go down and help people in need, take water in a very tangible, practical way. So as a community, we get behind that thing. We're hoping for about 30 people going down and building a couple homes this coming spring break. So anyways, keep that in mind. Hey, how many dog people are here today? Oh, wow, we've got, two-handers. We got some people that are passionate dog people. Yeah. I grew up with cats. Why are you dog people so judgmental toward cat people? Anyways. So never really kind of had an opportunity to become a dog person until my son told me that he was going to get a dog. And I said, no, you're not. We're not doing dogs. And he's like, Dad, we have to. It's a rescue, and da-da-da. Anyways, won't get into the story. We ended up with a dog. He got to my wife before I could, and it was pretty much a done deal. This little puppy came into our lives. Early on, knowing how to train a dog, it was like, no, cats just know that the kitty litter box is right there. No training involved. There was a lot to owning a dog, how to even take them for a walk and how to approach other dogs, whatever. We started watching the Caesar Milan. And hey, okay, everyone starts cracking. The Dog Whisperer. This guy so for any of you that aren't dog people or whatever, just this guy, he's been on TV, National Geographic, all over. He just has his way, with his sounds. He could just magically make a dog kind of, you could take this terror that had been chewing up pillows and crapping all over the place and aggressively biting other dogs. And Caesar Milan would take that dog and would begin working with it. The owners wanted to shoot the dog almost. It was just like we ended up with a dog with a demon somehow. And he would take a look at the dog and say, so oftentimes it's not the dog, it's the owner. And over a short amount of time, he would work his magic until that dog transformed in front of their eyes. Those owners would be going, I can't believe what is happening to this dog. You take this animal that was ready to be sent off for adoption to now becoming such a treasured part of their family. It's amazing. It's a dog whisperer. Did you know that there are some people who are like people whisperers? There's a guy named Jimmy. Author David Brooks, in his book, How to Know a Person, he talks about Jimmy. The author was he was in a big project interviewing some big community leaders. And he did some research and found out that there was this 93-year-old woman named LaRue who was known throughout this small town for being an incredible community builder. So he reached out to her and said, could I interview you? I would like to know a little bit about her, about what you do and how you've done all these amazing things. She was very short, not short stature-wise, but curt, shall I say. Stern. She gave spoken one-word answers. And she said, okay, fine. So he meets her in a coffee shop. And right away, the author says he was intimidated. Like she was this all-business type, hardly cracking a smile, calculated, stiff, like a drill sergeant. She made it clear she was tough. She loved her students. At one time she was a teacher. She said, I loved them enough to discipline them. He was like, ooh, okay. As he's interviewing LaRue, and just even trying to get her to talk was so tricky, a guy walks into the room. Jimmy walks into the restaurant. Jimmy's this 60-year-old teddy bearish looking guy. He looks across the coffee shop and says, LaRue? LaRue! And he's like, what's going on here? LaRue turns her head, and he says this face of stone just began melting. Jimmy says, LaRue, I love you. He comes running over. He's like, I've missed you. Jimmy is this community builder as well. He works with homeless people. He had been involved in a couple of projects with LaRue. He looked at her and he says, I love you, LaRue. As he began talking with her, he's like, oh, I'm sorry for interrupting. What's going on here? Whatever. And she's like, no, sit down. David Brooks, the author, is not sure what's just happened, but LaRue just became a different person. LaRue is smiling now. Jimmy's needling her, remember when? And she's like, oh yeah, I do remember. All of a sudden she's laughing. Now all of a sudden, the author asks the question, and what is coming out of her is like he said she just became this warm, embracing person. She started volunteering this vulnerable stuff that was coming up from within, stories of different life change, different students that had made a difference. She just started volunteering information like crazy. And the author was like, oh my God, what? How did you do this, Jimmy? I want to learn this. He said Jimmy had a way of seeing people. He said it wasn't just the stories that they shared between them. He said Jimmy had this ability to see in people something beautiful. In his words, the author's words, Jimmy looked into a person, could see a creature who was made in the image of God. He looked into someone's face, and it was as if Jimmy was looking at least a bit into the face of God. He was able to see a creature endowed with an immortal soul. He could just see something so powerful, so beautiful, that when he looked at LaRue, he was like, he was seeing this diamond inside of her, and she was responding. Now, I got to admit, that's not always easy. I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I struggle with certain people seeing something really valuable inside of them. You know what I mean? A guy who's busy listening to his music and just almost runs me off the road. It's like, pal. Sometimes my kids, when they say certain things, it's like, I'm not seeing the beauty in you right in the moment. I'm seeing the annoyance. I'm noticing the thing you're doing. That always grates me. The noise you make with that food in your mouth. I don't know what it might be. Sometimes even loved ones, the people that you love more than life itself, you can look at them and you can't see the diamond. You can see the other things. The crumbs on their mouth. But I'll tell you this, I don't doubt for a second the impact that someone like Jimmy can have on a life. Because I felt it. And I'm betting you felt it too. When I started thinking about the people in my life that have been like Jimmy, that have seen something in me right away, I thought about my grandpa Jarvis, my dad's dad. He, for whatever reason, looked at me and thought I could do no wrong. I remember arriving at my grandfather's place. My grandmother was the same way, but Grandpa had this way. If I walked through that door, it was like everything got dropped. He would be on the phone. He's like, I got to go right now. And it was just like the smile on his face, the excitement. Come here. I would get into the car with him and we would drive somewhere in his small town, Westlock, northern Alberta. And we'd stop into the hardware store. And it didn't matter where I went. Grandpa wanted to introduce me to his friend, to the store owner. Hey, I want you to meet my grandson. He was a big speaker within a big organization. They would hold these big conventions. Weston, downtown Calgary, packed ballroom. We would be there with my grandmother sitting at one of the tables. My sister always dreaded this, but he would say, I got some important things to do, but nothing more important than I want you to meet two very special people. And I'd be like, what? He's like, Jeff, Stacy, come on up here. Come on up here. Whether we loved it or hated it in the morning or in the moment, there was never a question of the value that he saw in us. Sometimes I couldn't even figure out what he saw because we were just normal kids. My parents were divorced. We'd go and see him every so often. Never enough, it seemed. But he just saw something so beautiful. And it's funny, whenever we would be at his house, I made my bed. It's weird because I'd never worry about that at home until Mom told me to. But it was like he brought out. I wouldn't fight with my sister when we were at Grandma and Grandpa's. He had a way of bringing something out of me. He never told me to do any of that stuff. I believed that I was something special when I was around him. I was like, yeah, I am that, whatever that is. You ever had someone like that in your life? Who just looked into you and saw something so beautiful? Author David Brooks calls these kinds of people, the Jimmies of the world, he calls them illuminators. They are the people whisperers. They have a way of looking into someone's life and making them feel so seen, so known, so special. There's certain things that they do. There's certain skill sets that they operate in. And some are so intuitively illuminators. They're not even thinking about it. They're just doing it. But the good news is that there are certain things, specific skill sets that they're employing that we can actually learn. That they're doing that you can go, oh, really? Okay. Because not all of us are wired that way. Some of us, it just doesn't come easy. But the good news is we can learn it. And that's what I want to start talking about this week. We're in this series called Looking into the Face of God. And we built it loosely on this book, but really what we're wanting to do is to help all of us learn to be a little bit more like Jimmy. A little bit more like my Grandpa Jarvis. To be able to see something magical in others and watch what it does to them. David Brooks suggests that in order to really know someone, to make them feel seen, it all kind of starts with being able to see something in them. Something beautiful. He said it this way. He said, you may be an atheist, you may be an agnostic, Christian, Jew, Muslim, doesn't really matter, Buddhist. But this posture of respect and reverence, this awareness of the infinite dignity of each person you meet, it's kind of a precondition to seeing people well. It starts there. It starts by looking past the rough edges to seeing that that's something in a person. You're going, wow, there's something there. If you've been around here very long, you will hear us talk about seeing the spark of the divine in someone. The spark of the divine. You go, wow, there's something beautiful about him. Wow, did you see the way that he talked about them? Did you see the way that he just stopped and listened? Whatever it is, sometimes you have to dig a little bit. You have to look past a lot of stuff. You go, oh, there it is. It starts there. People who are good at being illuminators, they have a way of being able to silence what it is that's going on in their own life, to look deeply into the life of another. That's where it starts. Let me ask you something. How often do you make a point of just looking hard to see something good in someone and telling them? Sometimes the challenge really is with those who are most familiar, those who are around every day. How often with those people, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's your own child, maybe it's your partner, maybe it's a friend of yours, how often you just take a time out and say, I just want to tell you something. I appreciate this about you. People can pick up how much value you have in them, how much value you place in who they are. They can pick it up. But when you really get good at just calling a time out and acknowledging it, it's where it seems to start. So seeing the spark of the divine in someone, let's just say that's a precondition for this whole thing. But then there's active curiosity. Last week I talked about a guy named Brian Fuller. He was a youth pastor. I met him in grade 8. And this guy turned my world upside down. I'd never had someone seem so interested in who I was from like stranger point. Met him for the first time. He was heavily invested in figuring out who I was. About 4 years later, I had just graduated high school, and I signed up to be a volunteer at a youth camp. To be honest, largely because I knew Brian was going to be there. I was hoping for another conversation with Brian. Sure enough, halfway in the week, I'm doing laundry in kind of like this laundromat room of this youth camp, and Brian walks in. He, again, no surprise, lit up and said, "Jeff, I saw you day one, but I've been wondering where you've been. I was hoping for a chance." He says, "You just doing laundry?" I said, "Yeah, I'm trying to get some laundry done." He's like, "How have you been?" So I hadn't seen him in a number of years. So it's like we just started talking. And he's like, "Okay, so you're done high school. Where are you going? What's the next move? What do you want to be?" He's asking me, he's just peppering me with these questions. And some of them are deep questions. I'm just like, man, I haven't, well, I'm not sure. At one point, I remember him saying, "You've been working out." I said, "Yeah, I've been in the gym." He says, "Why? What's with that? Is this about the girls? Are you trying to impress the girls?" I said, "Oh, kind of, yeah, that's it. Is it working? You got a girlfriend?" I said, "No, I don't got a girlfriend. It's not working yet." I just remember this moment where I'm going, I can't believe he asked me that, and I can't believe I told him. I was embarrassed, but there was no shame in his questioning. You know, that's the thing about active curiosity. It doesn't care what the answer you give is. It's not leading to a punchline or to a teaching moment. You know, sometimes I can get busy practicing curiosity with my kids, but it's leading to a teaching moment if they give me the wrong moment, right? Give me the wrong answer. It's like, that's what you're going to do? Yeah, about that. It's none of that. It's just, oh, really? That's what you're thinking? Fantastic. Active curiosity has a way of dropping the defenses. Because you sense on the other end, someone is looking into you and saying, there's nothing you can tell me. I just want to know. And I believe that whatever you're going to tell me is going to be a good thing. Because in you lies something good. And I just want to understand. This is a powerful skill set of an illuminator. It's just this fascination. What's going on? Hey, you seem quiet. You good? Your truth is all they want when they're practicing active curiosity. They just want to know the truth. No judgment. It stays there. I just want to know. Another question. Score yourself on active curiosity. How good are you at doing this? How often do you make time to just want to find out something about someone? Another skill set of illuminators is their use of affection. Their use of affection. Now, before you think you know what I'm talking about, because I thought I did when I read that, I'm like, I'm not the most affectionate guy. I can be verbally affectionate, but I'm kind of like, giving people hugs. I can do it, and I'm learning it better, but that's not what the author was talking about when he used this word. He widened the definition out in a way that I kind of blew my mind. He explained that as children of the Enlightenment, which we all are, we live in a culture that tends to associate knowing someone with an intellectual kind of exercise. We want to know something about something. Yeah, we study it. We dissect it. We collect the data. It can be a very disembodied intellectual experience. I know things about you. I know where you went to school. I know who your family is. I know what part of the world you grew up in. I know where you work. I know your favorite color. That's one part. That's the intellectual knowing. But helping someone feel seen is often, rarely an intellectual activity. Illuminators figure this out. Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan. Now, we've told this story many times. If you've been around here, it's loaded with incredible principles. Basically, if you've never heard it, a Jewish man walking on a road gets robbed, mugged, and beaten. He's left for dead on the side of the road. At least two other Jewish people come along, one of them being one of the Jewish rabbis, a leader. They spot this man in the ditch in trouble. They see him and know the situation's ugly, but they choose at that point to cross over to the other side of the street so they don't have to get close. Technically, they know, they see what's going on, but they remove themselves, knowing if I get any closer, I'm going to have to enter into this situation. And I'm not sure I want to. A Samaritan man, we explained it last week, Samaritans were not even recognized by Jewish people. Jewish people didn't want anything to do with them, didn't even talk to them. They were seen as foreigners, unwanted foreigners. A Samaritan sees the Jewish man in the ditch. And rather than crossing the street, he keeps getting closer and closer until he is in range. He enters into this Jewish man's world and enters into his pain and his mess. This is really what affection, by another definition, is. It's the act or the process of affecting or being affected by someone. Allowing whatever the hell is going on in someone's life to actually affect you. In this biblical story, making this man, so this Samaritan now is like, okay, now your problem is my problem. What can we do here? He loads this guy up. He takes him into town, takes him to a place where he can get medical help. Gets covered in who knows what, but allows this guy and his world and his problem to affect him. The Bible says he let his heart went out to him. He opened up his heart and said, oh, frick, I can't leave this guy like this. This is another incredible skill of Illuminators. They allow people to affect them. Sometimes truly seeing and knowing a person requires entering into their mess, hearing their difficult deals, feeling the misery that they might be feeling, or the joy. Someone might have had something really good go down, and they're just all smiles, and they're dying to tell someone, but they don't want to just come out and say, you won't believe what happened to me. And they're just hoping someone will see and notice. It's sad we live in a world that is so reticent, so unwilling to celebrate with others when something good is going down. Illuminators, they run to those stories. They go, you're smiling. I can tell something's going on. Question. When you sense something is off with someone, you know the people in your life. You can tell when the tone's different, when they're not as talkative. You can tell when they walk into a room and they're just, by their body language, something is missing. How often do you lean in at that moment? Or do you say, I'm out. I can deal with negativity. Oh, great. You good? You good? That's the one way to getting out of that. You all good? Yeah. Illuminators press in and go, okay, something's going on here. You want to talk about it? How willing are you to be affected by someone in your life when they're walking through something? So there's seeing the spark of the divine in someone. There's practicing this active curiosity where you're just asking with no agenda but to know. There's this willingness to be affected by someone. And then there's this thing that the author talks about. It's a holistic attitude of Illuminators. A holistic attitude. You know, over the years, I've heard number of people say, oh, Jeff's emotional. Some people I've talked with had a problem with it. They're saying, like, why do you cry? I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have an open limbic system. When I see someone, at home, man, I'll be watching a movie and all of a sudden it's just like, oh God. And I can't fight it. I'm just feeling what that person I'm watching is feeling. I'll tell stories and all of a sudden I'll picture the person and what they were going through. It's just like, but there is something that bothers me when people just use a single word to describe me. Saying, you're emotional. I go, yeah, well, screw you. I'm also can be a thinking person too. I'm more than just emotional, I guess is what I'm getting at. How many have ever felt stereotyped by someone? Felt like, wait a second, I don't like the label that you're throwing on me. No, I'm not ashamed of my emotionality. Let me be clear about that. I'll cry in front of anyone, all right? I think emotion is healthy. And I always tell someone who's apologizing for crying, I say, never apologize for that. But if you've ever been stereotyped by someone, kind of put in a box, in a singular box, and maybe it was from a bad chapter of your life, where you did something you regretted, and now they stuck a label on you. If you've ever felt that, that's what the author is getting at when he starts talking about this holistic attitude. There was a prominent art historian who was asked if Picasso was a misogynist and a bad guy. The historian got pissed off. He refused to let his subject, Picasso, be oversimplified or robbed of his contradictions. He said that question, is he a misogynist, is nonsense. Whatever you say about him, you say that he's a mean bastard, this is his quote, he was an angelic, compassionate, tender, sweet man. The reverse is always true. You say he was stingy? Yeah, well, he was also incredibly generous. You say that he was a bohemian? Yeah, he also had an uptight bourgeoisie kind of side to him. He was a mass of antitheses, as we all are. One of the most common and generally accepted delusions is that every person can be reduced to some particular trait. Illuminators fight that. Illuminators never allow themselves to characterize someone in a singular way. They go, no. This person is so much more than just one trait. Kind, wicked, Often what they'll say is, well, that person is a little more kind than he is wicked. They're able to see all the different complexities and layers that make up a person. They don't just get hung up on one. I want you to think about the people in your life and the way that you look at them. How many labels do you allow yourself to use when you think about them? A whole bunch? Or do you allow yourself to see them from all kinds of different sides? This is the holistic approach. It just says, okay, yeah, I know that they're that. But what else? What really drives them? That behavior doesn't make sense because I think there's another side to that person that's different. Illuminators load up the adjectives when they think about someone. They're going, oh, but did you notice this about them? And this, and this. One of the most beautiful things that I've felt is when someone sees a side of me that is often misunderstood. And they go, I think you got a little more of this in you than you've let off. And I go, you see that? Have you ever felt misunderstood? What's the one thing that you can think of that someone always seems to get wrong about you? Or one of the misunderstandings when people meet you that they don't pick up. You all have some sides of you that seems invisible to people, but the illuminators, they're paying attention. And they can see it. And they value it. They know you're more than that one label or three labels. You're deeper and wider and more complex than that. And all these different sides make up something so special and unique. Around here, we have this value of a unique spirit. We believe every one of you is on such a unique spiritual journey. We don't understand all the different places you've come from and the reasons you believe the way you do, the things that light you up and the things that piss you off. You're so unique. And that's to be treasured. That's to be honored. It's not to be homogenized. We're not asking you to come in here and think and talk and act all the same way. We don't need robots. We need everyone playing out to your uniqueness because this is what the world needs. But I'm telling you, illuminators know how to bring that out. Leo Tolstoy, a great Russian novelist, said, "Every man bears within him the germs of every human quality." And now manifests one, and then, now manifests another. It's like these different sides of you start revealing themselves in different situations. The light shines on you, and from one angle you look blue, and then from another angle, oh wow, there's a reddish tinge there. All these different sides of you comes out. He said frequently he is quite unlike himself while still remaining the same man. Illuminators resist the urge to focus on just one part of a human, but to see the whole person. Knowing that and believing that a person is much more than that one off day, that one bad chapter, that one mistake. This is why Illuminators always want to know the whole story. Was that song ever perfect? So here's the deal. We continually point out what we're trying to achieve in the spiritual journey. We're moving from an I lens that says, I need to understand who I am in this world. It's important for us to figure out who we are, our unique wiring, our uniqueness. But part of spiritual growth requires us to then, at some point, move beyond just knowing who we are and what we want out of life and what we're pursuing, to begin to see the other people in our lives. And begin supporting and encouraging and helping other people achieve what they're trying to do too. This is the spiritual journey. The thing that we're talking about today about being illuminators is this is a skill set that is so magic as we want to move from I into we. It is these kinds of things that we're going to talk about today, next week, the following week. This is the stuff that if we can figure out, if we can put these tools in our tool belts, not just the people that do this so intuitively, but if we could just learn how to more deeply see the person, people around us, to be affected by them, practice active curiosity. As we add these tools in our tool belt, we do move into we. I'm telling you, what this would look like. You take a community of maybe 250, 300 people that would call Friends Church their home right here in Calgary. And then the 20-some thousand listeners who are tuning in on a monthly basis. We add tools to their tool belts. Can you imagine what this does in our world? The little kids in the families who begin to feel seen. The employees. The co-workers, the changes that we could affect. I pray this week you will take some of these things and you'll practice them. Pick the one that's weakest in your tool belt and just do something. Try it. And you can thank me next week when you come back. All right? Good.